Hey, everybody, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown. I'm here with my normal co host, Dr. Andrew Vallo. And today we're going to talk about a really important subject. I must hear this like multiple times a day from docs. How do you hire the right people? How do you attract the talent? And, I'll tell you a story. So I had two docs, I won't get into details, that I brought to shadow Andrew's practices a few months ago. And I was there in person. And at the end of the day, the one doc, he said, how does Andrew find his employees? Like, how does he find the perfect talent? And I said to the doc, I said, well, one, I think you're asking the wrong question. How does Dr. Vallo get the most out of his team members? But there also is like, what is your hiring pool, right? I think docs think like it's like buying an item off a shelf. Like, I'm going to go grab this item and this is a talented office manager. And like none of them have labels and they're like grabbing them and opening them up and finding out what they are. And they're disappointed. I think the reality is what they're missing is when they grab the item off the shelf, it's like a DIY kit where it doesn't come ready and complete, and you have to put it together and do some work with that individual. So, I think it's a two-part thing, but how do you recruit talent, Andrew? Your organization grew rapidly, you scaled pretty quick. You had to put talented leaders in key positions that could execute right away. How did you grow talent and do this?
Yeah. So guys, I'm going to jump right in. This is going to be kind of a mini episode. I think we got 15 to 20 minutes. Matt might have to be like 5 minutes late for his next meeting, but I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about leadership positions, and I'm going to talk 10 minutes talking about doctors. So let's start with the leadership positions. So how do you attract leaders for your practice, whether it's, leaders as a hygienist, leaders as a, assistant, a lead assistant, leaders as an office manager? Because I'll tell you guys, I don't only look for leaders for those leadership roles. I want everyone in our group to be a leader in their own right. I want everyone to kind of have that ownership mentality, but especially when it does come to those managerial positions or those executive level positions, we're currently searching for a regional manager. So I'll tell you, we've gotten a little bit more strict in our hiring process. So we typically do post on or put job postings on Indeed. We sponsor them. And then what I do is I ask a bunch of like pre-qualifying questions. So we're going to kind of weed out the position, based on that. And I'll tell you, for our regional manager role, I didn't mess around with these questions. So, we're asking, there's the basic things like, are you willing and able to commute daily to our different locations around the Tampa area? Are you willing to, on occasion, commute to our South Florida locations and visit those in person? How many years of dental office manager experience do you have? Describe any kind of formal business or management training that you've had. So like there's kind of those basic questions, but then we get into, some more difficult questions. One of the questions for this role was, what in your mind are the three most important KPIs in a dental office and why? So we had them explain what they thought their three most important were and why they were. And that was a telling thing, because I'll tell you what, some of these candidates that had, fairly strong resumes gave pretty generic answers to that question. I think collections and production and number of new patients. Like that was like the most common generic one. And I'm like, okay, like I'm not saying those are bad KPIs, but again, when I first started my first practice, like those were the main things I paid attention to too. But as I became more sophisticated as a business owner, I learned that there's a lot of other super important KPIs besides those kind of most obvious ones. So like that was kind of telling and how some people responded to that question. I posed the question. It was a statement first. This is a demanding role. Our expectation is 50 to 60 hours work per week on average. Does that align with your life? And I wanted to see, what the responses were there. And, some people just simply said yes. Some people talked about their work ethic and the type of roles they held in the past where they worked those kind of hours and why they can manage it and, what they have going on in their life and things like that. Some people said answers like, we can negotiate the hours worked during the call. So, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like there were people that self-select themselves out of that process because, again, we're paying a competitive base pay with a lot of benefits and a lot of bonus opportunities for this role. I'm looking for someone that is 110% committed, has that ownership mentality, and wants to help take our group to the next level. I'm not looking for someone that wants to negotiate the hours worked and things like that. So ask those kind of difficult, pointed questions. And again, people can answer one way if they don't really mean it. So, this is only part of the equation. But the more of those type of questions you ask, the better idea you're going to get about the type of candidates that are responding, and the easier it is to kind of whittle down that applicant pool. Because I'll tell you what, when I posted this regional management position, within less than a week, we got over 75 applicants. So I didn't ask these questions, and like you can actually set where some of the questions are like required, and if they don't answer the right way, it automatically rejects them. And then some of them, aren't like that, but I can quickly read through their answers and reject them that way. And then you're also looking at the resume, you're looking at their experience. We're considering things like, for this role, do they need to have an MBA? No. But is that a helpful thing if they have formal business training like that? Absolutely. So, I'm able to consider all these different factors. The next thing that we're going to do is we did whittle the pool down to a certain number of applicants, and we are sending them assessment testing. So they're going to get an assessment for Colby. They're going to get an assessment for DISC, and they're going to get 2 aptitude tests. One is like general aptitude, and the other one is managerial aptitude. And then basically, some people aren't even going to take all the tests or any of the tests, and they're going to self-select themselves out of the process. And then from the ones who do take it, we're going to be able to look at the scores and consider the other, things from their resume and their pre-screening questions. And from there, we'll offer, a few select people the interview process. And then we're going to go through a couple rounds of interviews with our operations officer, our CFO, and myself. And we're going to narrow it down to 1 or 2 top candidates and make our selection from there. So we're starting with a big net, and we're kind of funneling everything down to the best. And that's who I want. And I told my operations officer, I said, this is not an immediate need for us. I would rather it take us 2 months to hire an A+ player for this role than it to take 2 weeks to hire an A-. I think that difference between a very solid leader and a top tier leader is monumental. And I think it's worth taking the time, effort, energy, and cost. I mean, it costs money. I'm having my team spend time doing this. We're spending money on the sponsored Indeed ad. We're spending money on these assessment tests we're sending out. So we are investing a good amount of time, energy, and money to find a great leader for the practice. Now, this is more about how you assess leaders. How do you actually attract the talented people to the role in the first place? So that's a whole different strategy. And I will say it does start with making sure that your compensation package is competitive. If you're trying to save every last dollar and you're trying to hire somebody for like the bare minimum for the role, it's probably not going to attract the absolute best of the best for the position. So you've got to figure out, what is a competitive compensation package for this role in my area? And you've got to make sure that you position yourself well. I'm big on bonuses, especially for these leadership type roles. So we do pay a competitive base pay for the area, but then we've got a whole bunch of benefits and bonuses that add in there where they could potentially make an extra $25,000, $30,000 for the year if they're doing the things they're supposed to do and the KPIs are stacking up and all that stuff too. So I think the compensation has to be competitive for the area. The other thing that we do is I'm very intentional with how the ad is written. So, I am, which I truly believe, but I'm letting them know right from the beginning of the ad, why we're a great company to work for, why there's growth potential with us, what our core values are, what the benefits of joining our team are, where we're headed, what our vision is, like all of that stuff. So the actual ad posting should be selling your office, your company, whatever it is. And then the screening process is where they're selling themselves to you. You don't want to be like, hey, tell me why I should hire you in the job posting, because that's where you got to cast that big net. You've got to make this position sound like the best position out there right now, and then from there, then you can whittle down the applicant. You'd rather get everyone to apply and then have processes in place to narrow it down to the absolute best applicants. The other thing that I do, besides having this podcast, I'm very active in dental Facebook groups. So, Zach Shelley, one of our co-hosts, was kind enough to let me post in his dentist office manager leadership Facebook group. And so I did a post about what we're looking for and about our group. And I put a link to the Indeed posting and we got a number of applicants from there as well. So, I think, again, the wider you cast that net, the more places you're putting the job posting, the more desirable you make the position in your office seem, the more top tier, the more competitive your compensation package is, the more top tier talent you're going to attract, and the more likely you are going to be able to hire a great, talented leader for your organization. Now, we don't go through the same process for every position. You know, we don't do the same thing for assistants, but we do have a process, and we do have screening questions, and we are going to be sending, moving forward, we're going to be sending all potential interview candidates Colby and disc testing, so we can, you know, get a gauge on who they are as a person. So I do think that's important as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we, like, you were going back to the questions, right? And you ask some questions that eliminate people. I think sometimes docs kind of go this direction. They don't realize that, like, you're not just interviewing them, they're interviewing you, right? So, like, docs looking from a point of view, like, I have this shelf of candidates, and I get to pick the one I want. No, it's just really bad mentality, actually. What you have is you have all these candidates, and it's like dating, and you find out what they want and what you want, and do these things match? And I think the question about, you know, are you prepared to work 50 to 60 hours a week, right? Well, if that's what the job needs, that's a question you should ask. Now, docs have a fear. If I ask this, will I eliminate a good applicant? No, they weren't a good applicant because the question affected them. Like, no, you didn't. Because if that's what your needs are of the business, and the applicant eliminates themselves because of it, then they were not. There's no scenario where that was a good applicant. And I think we have to remember, we're not only interviewing them, they're interviewing us.
Yeah, no, I think there has to be that mutual alignment. And again, it depends on we don't ask assistants, you know, are you ready to work 50 to 60 hours a week? Because, you know, we don't have any assistants that work those kind of hours. You know, we don't ask hygienists that, we don't ask doctors that, we don't even ask office managers that. You know, that it is a full-time role, but, you know, for office managers, we're typically expecting them to work 40 to 45, 50 maybe hours a week. But for our executive, I mean, our operations officer, he works as much as he'll tell you he works more than I do, and he might. But I mean, he works crazy hours, and that's just his self-motivation, and that's why he got himself promoted to that role. You know, he started as my executive assistant, and right off the bat, I mean, my expectations were for that role were like 40 to 45 hours a week, and right off the bat, you know, he's putting in all these extra hours because there's stuff that has to be done, and he's taking the initiative to do them. So, you know, for our executive type positions, there is heavy demand, a heavy workload. And it might not be every single week that they've got to work, you know, that many hours, but when we're opening new offices, when we're rolling out new systems, when we're prepping for, you know, an event or something like that, there are times where you do have to work crazy hours. You might have to work some weekend hours, you know, you might have to work at nights. And I want to make sure that the applicants understand that, and that fits their lifestyle right now, and that fits their goals. And to your point, that there's some alignment there. So I do want to switch gears. So that, you know, this is important, but it's also equally important, if not maybe even more important, that you attract top talent when it comes to associate doctors. So something I realized a long time ago, and has been a big part of our success for our group, is when I hire an associate, I am looking for the best associate with the most well-rounded skill set, who can offer advanced procedures, who's got a good bedside manner, who's not afraid to show patients the value of dentistry and create urgency and scarcity and all those things. So I think there's a lot of docs out. And again, you know, maybe I am lucky that I'm in a more competitive market in Tampa and Miami, where there's a lot of associates looking for work. So I do have a little bit of a bigger applicant pool. Yes, I will say that. And some people are in more rural areas, but I know other doctors in our area that hire associates, and they don't really put a whole lot of thought into it. You know, they put an ad up and they get a couple that apply, and, you know, they pick the one that they like the best, or, you know, whatever it is. I also think there's a lot of docs that are still practicing full time that they want to bring an associate to only do the basic dentistry. Like they are specifically seeking someone who doesn't have advanced skill sets because they want to keep that dentistry for themselves. I took the exact opposite approach. I look for dentists with the you know, who are more skilled clinicians than I am. I look for dentists who are doing advanced surgeries and, you know, comfortable doing FMRs and cosmetic cases. And what I want, those dentists that are, you know, humble, hungry, smart, and they're motivated to do the big procedures and to make big production numbers and all that stuff. And I won't hire an associate if they're not that way. I would rather wait to bring on another associate. I say this, maybe half kidding, but I would probably rather go back myself into an office and help them out than to hire the wrong associate there, because I'll tell you guys what, the level of skill of your associate, the comfortability, the ability to sell treatment, that's going to make or break your practice. You've got associate, and there is some coaching you can do, and people can take extra courses, and they can learn better communication skills. Like you can absolutely coach up an associate doc, but there is a range. That there's a ceiling that you can do that typically. And some people are just have it in them. Some people have it in them where they can produce 200,000 plus a month, and some people are capped at maybe 80,000 a month. And that is going to make a huge difference as far as the success of your practice, especially when you've got single doctor associate driven practices. So think about my group. Most of our offices are startups, or essentially all are startups. And as they're a brand new startup, we only have one doctor in there, and it's an associate doctor. So, having an associate doctor who's placing implants and doing Invisalign and doing veneers and, doing, full mouth rehabs and things like that, who's producing $150,000, $200,000 a month, is going to make a whole different practice than an associate that only wants to do bread and butter dentistry and is doing $60K a month. So I take the time, just like we do for our leadership positions. I make our roles, I make our offices sound like the most desirable job on the planet. And honestly, it really should be for the right doctor, because our full-time docs in 2025 will make between like 300,000 and our top producing doc, he's pushing up on $1 million. He'll probably finish, I would guess, at least around 900,000 this year on a 4-day work week. So we invest in marketing, and I tell them this, in the job posting, we talk about how our company has grown, what our core values are, how we prioritize a 5-star patient experience, how we invest in marketing, how we invest in technology, how we invest in team members like treatment coordinators to help them, fill up their schedules. So, we basically let them know we create this great environment for you where you can come in 4 days a week and do a whole bunch of dentistry if you've got the skill set to do it. And then you can take 3-day weekends and you can make really good income. And on top of that, we offer equity opportunities. So, after a year with our offices, if it's a good long-term fit, there's the opportunity to either earn or purchase equity depending on the office that they're coming into. So again, what attracts top talent? Competitive compensation. We let them know what our other docs are producing and making. We're not shy about that. We let them know that there's a daily guarantee, a competitive daily guarantee that never expires. We let them know about equity opportunities and things like that. And that's how we attract the top talent when it comes to our doctors as well.
People make culture in the practice, but I think leadership sets the tone of the culture, and then the people kind of live within the culture. I think a lot of times docs also lose track of this, is like they think they hired like 4 or 5 untalented people in a row. And if you have an employee turnover problem and you're saying things to yourself like, it's hard to get talent in this area. It may be hard to get talent in that area if you put out a job posting and you get 1 applicant. That's hard to find talent in that area. If you're putting out a job posting and get 20 applicants and you're still saying it's hard to get talent in that area and you're having problems, having lots of employee turnover, you might want to look at yourself and say, not how do I get talent in this market, but how do I make the most out of the talent I do get in my market? Yeah,
I think it's a little bit of both, Matt. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So, talented people want to work for talented organizations. Ambitious doctors, they want to go to offices that are killing it. Your top talent when it comes to leadership positions, they want to join an organization that's growing. So, if you want to attract better leaders, more talented people, you've got to up your own leadership too. So that's something I'm doing, guys. Despite all the growth we're doing in the practices, I am constantly investing in my own leadership growth. I'm part of mastermind groups. I'm part of consulting. I'm doing this advanced business acumen and leadership training. So I am continuing to try to up my game so that I can be a better, stronger leader, so that I can attract more strong leaders, both for dentists and other positions within our practice, because there's only so much effect I can have. If you're a strong leader, yes, you can amplify that throughout your team, but you've got to have the right people in position too. You can't just hire every average Joe off the street. Let's just put it this way. If someone leadership score is a 2 out of 10, even if you're a super strong leader, you're probably not pulling them up and making them a 9 or 10 out of 10 on the leadership scale. Could you help them grow and become a 4 or 5? Yeah, probably. But I think there is that ceiling on most people. So like if you're a 10 out of 10 leader and you want to continue to amplify that leadership in your organization, you need to look for people that are at least, 8 out of 10. So that way you can try to coach and grow them up to become 9 or 10 out of 10 leaders as well. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to just prove a point here that yes, you can coach. Yes, you can mentor. Yes, you can grow, but you have to bring in people that are at least at a certain point already, have a certain amount of experience, have a certain, personality, have a certain hunger and ambition. And then from there, yes, you can continue to grow them within your organization. But you do have to look for the right talent first. And I do think you're better off delaying a hire versus hiring the wrong person.
Well, guys, I think that wraps up our episode. Hiring talent in dental right now is a massive problem. Trying to find hygienists is hard. And I think it's always been a problem in dental. I think there's been more abundance of people available than before. But, dental is a hard job. Please click like, subscribe, follow, share. Me and Dr. Vallo don't do this for any other reason. There's no financial motivation for us. It's all about just putting good information out there to the community. So thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day.